Hello everybody, welcome back to another video of quick tips to implement into your classroom. My name is Milton and thank you for joining again. I hope everybody had a very nice break for during the Christmas period and then the beginning, and everybody's having a very great start to the new year. Fingers crossed that 2022 is going to be a year of more opportunity and more freedom than the past couple of years. Fingers crossed, let's see. But what I am certain about is there'll be a lot of learning in this year. As you know, these videos are we're making these videos in the lead up to BEBO 2022, fantastic teaching conference that British Council holds every year. And hopefully this will get people excited about what we will be seeing in that conference. Okay, so let's begin today. Can you go to the first slide, please, Carlos? So the topic of today is how to teach vocabulary. I'm sure all of you English teachers have heard the same from your students. What is the most difficult thing about learning English? Oh, I need more vocabulary, or I don't understand a lot of vocabulary. This is something that we see that students perceive to be their area of improvement from very low levels all the way up until C2 advanced and proficient levels. It's something which is common throughout every stage of learning, where students perceive their biggest area to improve in to be learn more vocabulary. And in many cases, they're right. The English language has a lot of vocabulary. It's a vocabulary-packed language, and it's one of the difficult things about learning English. So let's look at some of the reasons why this might be, and some tips about how to improve. Okay. Next slide, please, Carlos. Before we begin, I'd like to do a quick vocabulary quiz with you. Okay, this is to kind of diagnose what we know about the importance of vocabulary in the English language. So we have 3 sentences here. If you want to interact and you want to participate, you can write your answers in the chat. I think that's a good idea. See how close you can get to the answer. Okay, so if you write it in the chat, I'll be able to see. Let's look at the first one. There are approximately word families in English. When I say word family, I mean a word that might have different conjugations, but all of those conjugations are part of the same word family. So, for example, help and helpful, of course, they're the different words, but they're within the same word family. So help, helpful, helpless, helplessness, it's part of the same word family in this quiz. So if we consider help, all of those versions of help to be one word family, how many of these word families do you think there are in English? Write your answer in the chat. I will show you the answers in a minute, don't worry. Number 2, a proficient English-speaking university graduate has a vocabulary size of approximately word families. So the third question is the total amount of word families, and the second question is a C2 level student, somebody who has graduated from university, how many word families should he or she know? And the final question, again, write your answer in the chat. And the final question is the most frequent words make up 9 out of every 10 words in most written texts. As teachers, I'm sure you know, we have high frequency words and low frequency words. High frequency words are words that we use very frequently, very often. And 9 out of every words that are in texts are a certain amount of words in total. Can you answer, what do you think? Write in the chat. So let's have let me see some of your ideas. Okay, so no answers just yet, no worry. Maybe it's a bit tricky, or maybe you're just checking, maybe you're having a think. But that's okay. Let's look at the answers. Carlos, please, the next slide. So, there are approximately 54,000 word families in English. So, I'm not sure about you, but I find that quite amazing. So to think that all of those, helplessness, helpful, helped, help, helping, all of those count as one word family. We have approximately 54,000 different families in English. It's a huge amount, and it's a very big amount when you take into comparison other languages. Okay, English has one of the more vocabulary rich languages that around. A proficient English-speaking university graduate has a vocabulary size of approximately 20,000 word families. Okay, so that's about half of everything that exists, which is still a lot. It's still a huge amount, 20,000 different ones. And the most frequent 2,000 words make up 9 out of every 10 words in most written texts. So the reality is, well, how many words do we need to know? No? Well, if we know those 2,000 most frequent words, we're going to survive in most situations. We're going to be able to deal with most texts, most audios that we listen to, and be able to converse in most social interactions. So what does this mean? This means that there are a lot of words in English. This is difficult, but as teachers, we can help students by helping them focus on the more frequent words and the more relevant words to their situation. Okay? Next slide, please, Carlos. Thank you. Now, in relation to this, this is a table that's come from studies conducted by CUP, Cambridge University Press. They've measured how many words students at each level of their learning should know, more or less. So active vocabulary is vocabulary that we're able to use, we're able to produce in speaking and writing correctly. Passive vocabulary is words that we understand, but maybe we're not actually using them yet. Okay? So as we can see, someone at beginner level, A1, should have about 300. Okay? And that's quite interesting, because we can actually measure how we think our students are doing by the range of vocabulary they're using. No? And this goes all the way from 300 to 10,000 by C2 level. And their passive vocabulary is, of course, 20,000. Okay? So this is something to bear in mind when we're thinking about how we grade our vocabulary for different levels. Next slide, please, Carlos. So what are some important questions for us as teachers in supporting our students learn vocabulary? Well, the first one I'd like to focus on is, what does it mean to know a word? So is it just the definition? Do students only need to know what the definition of a word is, or do they need to know more? We will try to answer this question in a minute. How do students remember words? Well, there are some very concrete ways we can train students to remember words. And we can also take into consideration the way students feel that they learn new words. Okay. What makes words difficult to learn? Well, this is quite closely linked to the first question. There are many different ways. There are many different things that we need to know to be able to use a word, and which one of those are most difficult to learn? And how many words can someone realistically learn in a day? It's very important for us as teachers to support our students set objectives. And one of the important things in setting objectives is making these objectives realistic. It's unrealistic for a student to learn 100 words a day. They're just not going to learn. It's impossible. So making that realistic. Okay, next slide, please. So what does it mean to know a word? To know a word, we need to know the meaning, so the definition. Okay, How can we convey meaning? Well, we can give them a definition. We can give them the translation into their L1. So in this country, in Mexico, Spanish, we give a picture, something like that. We use that to convey meaning. To know a word, we also need to know spelling, because to know a word, we need to be able to write it as well. Now, as many of you know, as all of you know, spelling in English is tricky. It doesn't always match to the way we pronounce the word. Part of speech, is this word a noun, a verb, an adjective, an adverb? This is going to help students use it correctly in terms of where it goes in the sentence, for example, and also how we use it to collocate, what collocations it might have. Connotation. So has it got a positive connotation? Has it got a negative connotation? A classic example of what connotation means is the difference between slim and skinny. So slim is something positive. Many people want to be slim. It's attractive. But skinny is a negative word. Skinny means it looks unhealthy. Somebody who needs to eat more. No? But basically, slim and skinny both mean thin. So this is what connotation is. The meaning behind it. Is it positive or is it negative? Register. So, as you know, different countries and different regions of the world have different Englishes. So that's important to learn. The difference between pants in the United States, which are trousers, and pants in the UK, which is underwear. That's very important for students to know. The variety of the language, style. So it could also be things like formality. It's much more correct to say, look forward to hearing from you at the end of an email than to say, I can't wait to see you when you're in a professional context. So register is very important. Word association, so things like synonyms, antonyms, coordination. These all help us learn words. Collocation, as I mentioned before, focusing on the correct collocation, because many students at A1 level will know what a shower is. So we'll know what lunch is. But many students at A1 level will say, I take lunch, because that's a direct translation, isn't it? But of course, as you know, we say to have lunch or to eat lunch. Okay, so this collocation is important to know when learning a word. And of course, last but by no means least, the pronunciation. If we are unable to pronounce a word correctly, then other listeners will be unable to understand us, and therefore we're not able to communicate it. So we need to learn all of these things to learn a word. It's a lot of information. And it's our job as teachers to help students digest all of this information in an effective way. Now, this can be difficult, but one of the tips I'd like to give you is by using some sort of chart. Maybe it doesn't work for everyone, but by using a table, we're able to fill in a lot of the important information. Can you go to the next slide, please? So here's an example. So in this example, the word is cat. Okay. So when I wrote grammar, I mean part of speech, cat is a noun. The pronunciation, if your students are able to read the pronunciation, the phonology, and that's useful. Students are able to mark down how to write it. If your students are a bit more tech savvy and they're taking notes online or digitally, you can even get them to. They can even record the pronunciation and save the audio there. I think that's a very nice way of doing it. That's the way I do it with my own learning. The meaning, the definition. So here we have a picture. In this case, because it's a cat, we don't need anything more than a picture. No? An example, how to use it in context. Collocations. Well, in this case, there aren't any strong collocations with cat. Translation. A lot of people. I know there's a lot of debates about how much we should be using L1 and our in our teaching. I'm a strong believer of using it to aid learning as much as possible. And if it's going to help the student remember what the word is, then let's use it. And then other word families, so kitten, a young cat, wild cats, so like lions and tigers and things like that, to help us remember the context. So this is something that you can start doing with you can start supporting with your students, providing them with a chart to help them get as much information about the word as they need to really learn it. Okay, next slide, please, Carlos. So how can students remember words? I've got a terrible memory, so I've spent a lot of time thinking about tips on how to remember things, because it's difficult for me, and I see it's difficult for a lot of my students too. So what can we do to support ourselves in remembering the words? Well, the most important one is repeating it. Okay, so students within the class, they need to be repeating it. So they need to be using it. For example, pronunciation and drilling activities are very useful. Repeat after the teacher. That a few times is useful. Also within the class, using it in practice activities, whether it be controlled practice or more free practice. But then also it needs to be that students need to repeat it the next day. So by setting some useful homework where the students will need to use it, something which actually encourages the students to use it in context. And then the next week, the next month, the next 2 months, the next 6 months. Studies show that, there's this figure that's always thrown about in teaching circles. Studies show that somebody needs to hear a word at least 7 times before they remember it. For me, probably it's more like 15 because I have a terrible memory. So the more we repeat it, the better. Okay. So when we repeat it the next week, the next month, whatever, it's good if students can get into the habit of doing this themselves and becoming more independent. But also us as teachers, we can have recycling activities, so review activities and activities which encourage students to learn to practice these words at different stages throughout the course. That's very important. Memorization activities for within the class. So gap sentences is a practice activity to help them memorize. One thing I like is having the definition and having the words and having a definition, covering the words, looking at the definition and trying to remember. It's very simple, but it's useful. Using it in context. Unless we actually produce words, unless we actually use them, we're going to forget them. So by providing students with activities in class to use the words in the correct context. So if the word is cat, we need to find an appropriate context for them to use cat. Right? So for example, talking about pets. And personalization. Personalization means that we are allowing students, we're providing students the opportunity to use the word in something which means something for them. This is more memorable and more motivating, no? So with the example of a cat, describe a cat you know. I don't know, no, or how something like that. Okay, so these are all important tips for remembering words. Next slide, please. What can be difficult for students? Well, I'm sure we're all aware of this. Pronunciation is one of the most challenging things for students learning vocabulary in English, because English pronunciation rules are tricky and they're diverse. As English has an origin of so many different origins. So a lot of words come from Anglo languages, a lot of words come from Latin. Pronunciation is difficult because we have different rules. Spelling, of course, for similar reasons. The length and complexity, as we have such a wide range of words, some of these words, some can get very long and very, very tricky. The grammar, what does the grammar mean? So the collocations, the connotation, what it means with for example, things like phrasal verbs. This makes very difficult as well. Meaning, sometimes the meaning itself can be a bit bit tricky to understand, but also there can be various meanings, so that can be tricky as well. And range, connotation, and idiomaticity. So it's difficult to learn a word. Next slide, please. So here are 6 general tips for helping students overcome the difficulties that they face in learning a word. So what are these difficulties? The quantity of the words, the amount of information they need to know to really know how to use a word, the difficulties within English itself, the pronunciation, the spelling, the grammar, etc. So one of the most important tips which supports self-directed learning, supports autonomy, is encouraging reading. Okay, all of us know that reading makes us more articulate and provides us with more a wider range of words to be able to use. But what's quite important to do, in my opinion, is reading is fantastic, but let's try to read actively. So if there's a new word, encourage students to get into the habit of recording new words as they read. Maybe not every single word, but words within the context of a lesson or within something that you're focusing on. So if you give them a text or a small article to read, identify all the phrasal verbs, or identify all the idioms, or identify all the adverbs or the adjectives, and focusing on a part of speech makes that kind of reading activity a bit more manageable. Finding a dictionary and a thesaurus you like. So there's so many dictionaries, so many thesauruses. I think it's useful that learners explore the different versions available, find what they like, and then stick with it. Okay, so it just becomes routine. Building your own dictionary. So similar to the table that I showed before, this is so useful. It doesn't always need to be in a table. We can also do kind of mind maps and things like that. We can also do focus on ways we can connect words with different things. So by encouraging learners to have their own vocabulary dictionary, they're really going to be digesting it themselves, and they're going to be picking up useful habits for remembering words. Being disciplined, okay? So everybody's different, but as a general figure, number, I would say learn 10 words a day, okay? If students can learn 10 words a day for a year, that's moving up a CFR level without a doubt in terms of vocabulary. So 10 words a day, maybe it sounds small, maybe it sounds a lot, but I think that's a realistic number. That's definitely within a lesson. If you're teaching students a vocabulary lesson, I would focus on between 8 to 12. Otherwise, it's not enough and not difficult enough. If it's less than 8 and more than 12, it just becomes too challenging, I think. Play the memory games. A couple of these activities I suggested before, I'm going to show you 2 more in a minute. And engaging in conversation practice, providing useful, realistic, real-world situations where students can talk about it or can write about it and can use it freely and in a personalized way. So these are the kind of main areas that I'd like to focus on. One final slide, please, Carlos. So as I've told you before in this video series, I love using technology as part of learning and within the classroom. And 2 of my favorite websites for practicing vocabulary are Bamboozle and Quizlet. Maybe you've seen these already, but I'm a big fan. Bamboozle is you, as a teacher, you will put in the word and the definition, or the word and the picture, and then you can create different types of games for students to play in teams or individually. The good thing about Bamboozle is that they also have a massive online community of pre-prepared vocabulary sets. So even if you just go to the search bar and search for colors or adjectives or idioms, there will be many pre-prepared ones there for you to go. If you need something more specific, you may have to make it yourself, but there are many there. They're fun, okay? They're engaging, they're motivating. And Quizlet, I think probably everybody knows about Quizlet. The Quizlet is so good for learning vocabulary because it basically simulates all these activities we probably used at school ourselves, of using flashcard activities, matching activities, and things like that. Quizlet simulates all those activities in a digital way. And the good thing about Quizlet is once you make a Quizlet, it's saved forever. So you make one and you can share it with all the classes you want, or with all that students can share it between themselves. And they can play different types of games. You can make it competitive. It's great. Okay, so if you haven't used Bamboozle and Quizlet, research it. Okay, so there. I hope we've looked at some useful tips for you today. We've looked at why vocabulary is difficult for students. We've looked at some information about what students need to learn to be able to know a word, and we've looked at how they can remember it, and some tips about how to remember effectively. So to the final slide, please, Carlos. The final slides. So, as I said, that's the end of this bit. Do you have any questions about today's video, or about learning vocabulary, about teaching vocabulary, excuse me? So please write your comments and your questions in the text, in the comment box. I'm just going to have a look now. Hello, Beatriz and Sax and Elena, thank you very much. And Maddie, thank you very much for joining us today. Beatriz, you're welcome. Sax says, it's kind of tough, the use of the word though. Yeah. Though is a tricky word, isn't it? Well, what's the suggestion for teaching though? Let me think a second. Well, though of course is a connector of contrast, isn't it? So I think the best thing to do with that is to put two bits of to provide students with some examples. It was cold today, though it was cold today, I didn't wear a jacket. So to provide the examples and context for the students, and then provide some practice activities after. So a practice activity would be something like two bits of information which contrasts with each other, and students have to, so two individual sentences which contrast. So it was cold today, full stop. I didn't wear a jacket, full stop. And then ask students to rewrite those two sentences and make it one. And putting though in the correct place. By providing several examples like that, that's a good way of kind of internalizing it. And then ultimately ask the students to provide their own examples. Now, remember, personalization is very important. Okay, the pronunciation of dirty. Okay. Okay, so thanks for Maddie, you're very welcome. I think I'm glad you found this useful. Elena, I'm glad you found this useful. Thanks, Alex. I'm glad you found these useful as well. Nice to see you, Alex. Thank you, Elena. Very good. Any other questions before we go on to the final part, the surprise of the video? Okay, well, in that case, if you have some questions, feel free to write them. I'll try to get back to you at a later stage. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. Before you go, wait a minute, we have a surprise. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So, as I'm sure you all know now, I'm a big promoter of this. In February this year, we have BEBO. BEBO is the best and brightest of English language teaching 2022. As I mentioned before, so it's really the best conference in Mexico for English language teaching. It's very, very, well regarded. There are experts from all over the world who participate. People from all over Mexico who are involved. We have some very exciting plenary speakers this year. I'm definitely going to be there. It's a great place to network, to meet others within your profession. So not only if you're a teacher, also if you work in education, if you're a manager of a school, if you're a trainer, if you're a decision maker in an educational institute, it's a great place to build up your contact base and to learn about the industry, to learn about what's happening. One of the things I'd like to tell you all is that we are extending the early bird promotion for the whole of January. Okay, so throughout the whole of January, you have the early bird discount, which is a fantastic discount. And also, if we go to the next slide, please, Carlos. As you watched our video, we have a present for you. If you buy a BEBO ticket for 2022, you will receive a second completely free to invite whoever you like. So a nice present for somebody else, or you can go hearts and hearts with a colleague. Sorry, it says a lindo regalo de Navidad, but Navidad's finished. But for Reyes, no, or for something like that. So you can make this valid by following these steps. You go onto BEBO, also go to our website. You can select. You write your personal information on this link here. You register yourself, and then in your registration you use this code QuickTips131221, and as soon as you pay, you'll receive an email with the second code of discount. So for the free participants, which you can provide to your friends, and they can register. Okay, so it's a good discount. Maddie says, "Wow, yeah, I agree, Maddie." It's a very good discount. So we still have this for this week. Throughout January, in these videos, we will be offering a different discount in every video. This has been the same for the past couple of weeks, but it will be different for the upcoming sessions. So please stick around to see what they are and to distribute this information to your colleagues. Okay, and that's it from me today. So thank you very much for joining. I hope you're going away with some useful ideas for how to teach vocabulary in a class, and I hope you're also getting as excited as I am about BEBO 2022, which will be happening very, very soon. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much, and have an excellent week. Okay, goodbye, everybody.